When a person exercises restraint in their speech, they begin to signal something far more powerful than mere silence. They begin to project authority. Restraint, particularly in how one uses language, is not a form of weakness or passivity. It is a profound demonstration of self-control. In a culture where people are conditioned to constantly express, comment, react, and broadcast their every thought, the person who pauses, who chooses to speak sparingly, immediately stands out. This kind of restraint doesn't go unnoticed. In fact, it draws attention precisely because it's rare. When someone refrains from over-explaining, interrupting, or dominating conversations, they create a sense of calm and focus around them. People naturally begin to assume that this person has depth, that they are thinking carefully, and that when they do speak, it will be worth hearing. This is not about manipulating perception. It is about becoming disciplined in your speech to the point where you speak not to fill silence, but to convey meaning. Authority, real authority, is not established through sheer quantity of words. It is earned through the quality of one's presence and the clarity of one's language. When you restrain yourself from immediately reacting or speaking just to be included, you show that your self-worth is not dependent on validation. That independence is magnetic. People gravitate toward those who appear secure, who are not trying to prove themselves at every turn. Restraint becomes a form of strength, quiet, contained, but unmistakably present. The act of holding back, of resisting the temptation to add unnecessary commentary or to compete verbally, communicates that you have control over yourself, and self-control is one of the most trustworthy traits a person can develop. Think about the leaders you admire, the ones who don't need to shout to be heard, who don't need to explain themselves endlessly, who choose their words with care. These are the individuals who command rooms without raising their voices, who earn respect without demanding it. Their authority is not in their volume, it's in their restraint. They speak from a place of internal order, not external pressure. Restraint also signals that you have access to your own thoughts, that you are not driven by impulsivity but guided by reflection. When people sense that you are intentional with your words, they begin to pay closer attention. They wait for your contribution. They listen more carefully, not because you are loud, but because you are deliberate. And in that space between silence and speech, your presence begins to speak louder than your words ever could. Authority that is rooted in restraint does not fade. It doesn't depend on trends, on approval, or on performance. It rests on something unshakable, the ability to control what you say and when you say it. And in a world where so many are quick to speak, that control is a rare and compelling form of power. Observation is the foundation of understanding, and understanding is the beginning of wisdom. Before any meaningful insight can emerge, one must first be willing to look, really look, at the world without rushing to interpret or interfere. Most people are quick to react, to speak, to form opinions. But true wisdom is born not from rapid response, but from patient and careful observation. It's a process of noticing the details others miss, of paying attention not just to what is loud and obvious, but also to what is subtle and hidden. The act of observing is an act of humility. It is a quiet admission that there is something here I do not yet fully understand, and I am willing to learn from it before I impose my own voice. In interpersonal relationships, in moments of conflict, in studying systems or ideas, observation must come first. It creates the space for reality to reveal itself on its own terms. Instead of rushing to explain or solve, the observer waits, listens, and watches. And in doing so, patterns begin to emerge, motivations become clearer, problems reveal their root causes. But this only happens when one resists the urge to prematurely label or judge what they are seeing. The person who builds the habit of careful observation gains access to a deeper layer of reality, one that isn't visible to the distracted or the impulsive. Over time, this leads to the kind of wisdom that seems intuitive, but is in fact earned through attention. Observation also refines perception. It sharpens the senses. It teaches you not just to look, but to notice, not just to hear, but to listen. And the more attentive you become, the more distinctions you begin to make. You stop lumping people and situations into convenient categories. You begin to see nuance, and it is in nuance where truth lies. Wisdom is not found in the extremes. It is found in the balanced recognition of complexity. But that recognition only arrives after observation has done its work. What's more, observation trains the mind to delay gratification. It strengthens the capacity to withhold judgment until enough information has been gathered. This delay, this pause between stimulus and response, is where intelligence is forged. Anyone can react, few can respond wisely, and wisdom always requires a delay. That delay is created through watching, listening, sensing, through observing not only the external world, but also your own internal responses. Why did that comment bother me? Why am I drawn to this idea? These questions can only be answered if you are paying attention, not running on autopilot. In the end, wisdom is not the accumulation of facts, but the result of a deep, patient engagement with the world as it actually is. That engagement begins with observation, with the willingness to be still, to look carefully, and to wait until what needs to be understood rises to the surface. It is not glamorous, it is not loud, but it is where real insight begins. Precision in speech and action is one of the most underrated yet powerful tools a person can develop. It communicates that you have thought carefully, chosen deliberately, and understood deeply. When you speak with precision, people listen differently. They sense that your words are not random or rehearsed, but rooted in clarity. You don't just say what comes to mind. You say what matters, and in doing so, you build credibility. Credibility is not granted automatically. It's earned slowly and consistently through the way you carry yourself and the way you communicate. Every vague or careless statement chips away at that credibility. Every clear, intentional one reinforces it. Precision requires discipline. It forces you to slow down and ask, what do I really mean? What exactly am I trying to say? Is this the right word, the right tone, the right time? These questions create a filter between thought and expression, a filter that sharpens your message. Instead of rambling or over-explaining, you speak in a way that respects your audience's time and attention. And that respect gets returned in the form of trust. People begin to rely on your words because they know you're not speaking to fill space or impress. You're speaking to illuminate something real. In professional environments, precision sets people apart. The person who can articulate a problem clearly is often the one who ends up leading the solution. Why? Because identifying something with accuracy requires real understanding. It's easy to speak in generalities. It's easy to hide behind jargon or to mask uncertainty with volume. But people who speak with precision cut through the fog. They say, here is what's happening, here is what matters, here is what we need to do. That kind of clarity is rare, and rare things command value. Precision also demonstrates respect for language and for truth. It shows that you're not willing to dilute or distort meaning to make things easier or more comfortable. You're aiming for accuracy, even if that accuracy makes things more difficult. And that honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, is what builds long-term credibility. People may not always agree with you, but they will learn to trust that you mean what you say, and that you're not carelessly guessing or pretending. This applies just as much in personal relationships. Precision in expressing how you feel, what you need, or what you expect creates healthier communication. Vague complaints and unclear boundaries breed resentment and misunderstanding. But when you learn to be specific about your thoughts, your limits, your intentions, you give others a chance to understand you clearly. That understanding builds mutual respect. It reduces confusion. And it leads to more stable, authentic relationships. In every area of life, precision is a form of integrity. It says, I've taken the time to understand this, and I'm offering you something that's been thought through. That kind of communication has weight. It doesn't need to be repeated or defended constantly. It stands on its own because it was built on clarity, not on noise, and from that clarity, credibility grows. Silence, when it comes from a place of confidence and intentionality, can have an almost magnetic effect. In a world that constantly demands noise, expression, and visibility, the person who can remain silent stands out. This silence is not the silence of absence or insecurity, but the silence of presence, of someone who is grounded enough not to rush into every conversation, not to speak just to be noticed, not to fill every gap with commentary. This kind of silence draws people in rather than pushes them away. It creates a space around the person, a kind of psychological gravity that makes others pay closer attention. People begin to wonder what that person is thinking, what they might say when they do choose to speak. That wondering creates intrigue, and intrigue often becomes influence. Magnetism isn't always about being the loudest or most expressive person in the room. More often, it belongs to the one who seems calm in the chaos, who listens while others argue, who waits while others rush. That restraint gives a signal, one that says, "I am not desperate for your approval. I do not need to speak in order to matter." And ironically, that very detachment often earns more respect than words ever could. When a person is silent but fully present, their body language speaks volumes. Their posture, their facial expressions, their eye contact all communicate more effectively than someone who is frantically trying to be heard. Silence can also signal that someone is deeply engaged, thinking, reflecting, choosing their words carefully. And in a society that too often rewards instant reaction over thoughtful response, this kind of silence is both rare and powerful. People feel safer around someone who is deliberate. They feel that what is eventually said will be meaningful, not impulsive, and that sense of reliability is magnetic in itself. Others are drawn to people who seem to have internal order, who are not easily swayed or provoked, who possess a certain stillness that hints at depth. There is also a certain strength in silence. It shows that a person does not feel the need to control the room or dominate the discussion. They are comfortable letting others speak, letting the moment breathe, letting ideas unfold naturally. And because they don't rush to fill silence, their words, when they come, carry more weight. They arrive like a calm statement in the middle of noise, clear, deliberate, and often remembered long after louder voices are forgotten. People are not just attracted to energy and charisma, they are drawn to mystery and composure. The person who speaks constantly reveals everything. The one who is silent reveals only what they choose. That selective communication creates allure. It suggests depth. It hints that there is more behind the surface, something worth discovering. And that hint, that gap between what is shown and what is held back, creates a powerful pull. That is the magnetism of silence. Not empty, not awkward, but full of potential and purpose. Words, like currency, lose their value when they are spent too freely. In our age of constant communication, text messages, voice notes, social media posts, endless conversations, the sheer volume of words exchanged daily is staggering. But as words become more abundant, they also become more disposable. When everything is said, little is heard. When everyone is speaking all the time, it becomes difficult to discern what matters and what doesn't. The more we talk without purpose, the more we dilute the impact of what we say. Overused words lose their edge. They no longer carry the weight they once did. They become background noise, easy to ignore, easy to forget. There's a kind of inflation at work here, a verbal inflation. Just as printing more money without backing it with real value leads to economic collapse, speaking more without backing it with real thought leads to a collapse of meaning. Promises become empty. Praise becomes routine. Apologies become mechanical. The substance of communication erodes, and yet we keep speaking, often out of habit, often to fill silence, often just to reassure ourselves that we're being heard. But being heard is not the same as being understood. And understanding doesn't grow from volume, it grows from intention. When someone uses words sparingly and intentionally, their speech begins to carry more weight. People listen more closely, not because the person speaks often, but because when they do, it's worth hearing. Their words are not cheap. They've been earned through thought, observation, and restraint. This contrast creates a kind of gravity around their communication. Others start to trust that their speech has been filtered through care and reflection. But when someone is constantly talking, repeating themselves, over-explaining, embellishing, they risk turning their voice into something predictable and dull. Predictability is the enemy of attention. People stop listening not because they dislike you, but because they already know what you're going to say, and they know it won't add anything new. Words should be treated as something precious. Each one chosen should serve a purpose, to clarify, to connect, to express truth. When we overuse language, especially powerful words like always, never, amazing, or terrible, we wear them out. We reduce their emotional impact until they no longer stir thought or feeling. Communication becomes lazy, and lazy communication leads to lazy thinking. The discipline to speak with care reflects an inner discipline to think with clarity. Furthermore, when words are overused, trust can be eroded. If someone constantly makes dramatic claims or endless promises that go unfulfilled, eventually their speech loses all credibility. It's not that people start to disagree with them, it's that they stop taking them seriously at all. Their words, like counterfeit bills, may resemble something real, but they have no value. This is why restraint and honesty in speech matter. When people know that your words are not thrown out casually, they begin to listen with more intention. They begin to associate your voice with meaning. And meaning, in a world overflowing with chatter, is what truly sets a person apart. Attraction at its core is not merely about appearance, charm, or even charisma. It is about composure. Composure signals inner stability, and stability is something people are naturally drawn to. In a world filled with uncertainty, emotional volatility, and constant overstimulation, someone who appears centered and self-possessed instantly stands out. They offer a kind of calmness that others instinctively want to be near. It's not about being emotionless or distant. It's about demonstrating that your emotions don't control you. It's about responding, not reacting. That quiet self-governance is deeply attractive because it implies strength, maturity, and confidence without arrogance. When someone is composed, they convey that they know who they are and do not need to prove it in every interaction. Their sense of self does not rise and fall with praise or criticism. This creates an aura of reliability, a sense that they are not easily shaken by external events. People are drawn to that. It's comforting, it's reassuring. In relationships, both personal and professional, individuals naturally seek out those who remain steady under pressure, who do not crumble in the face of stress, and who do not let minor inconveniences turn into major crises. That steadiness is rare, and it communicates a kind of quiet strength that doesn't need to advertise itself. Composure also reflects a deep level of self-respect. When you carry yourself with calm intention, you're sending a message. You value your energy, your attention, and your emotional state enough not to give them away cheaply. You don't chase validation. You don't try to win arguments just to feel superior. You don't demand attention. You command it through your presence, and that kind of presence often says more than words ever could. It shows that you are someone who can be counted on, someone who won't unravel when life becomes difficult. That emotional predictability, far from being dull, becomes a pillar of attraction. People feel safe around someone who is composed, not because they are passive, but because they are deliberate. Composure also reveals discipline. It takes real work to stay calm when provoked, to speak thoughtfully rather than impulsively, to remain emotionally grounded when others are losing control. That discipline is often invisible, but its effects are felt deeply. People notice when someone doesn't rise to bait, when someone pauses before speaking, when someone doesn't broadcast every opinion or feeling. That kind of restraint speaks volumes. It suggests that the person isn't ruled by their environment, but instead brings order to it. And again, that is attractive, not just romantically, but socially and professionally as well. There's also a mystery that comes with composure. When someone doesn't react immediately or share everything they're thinking, they create a subtle sense of intrigue. Others start to wonder what's behind the calm exterior, what thoughts are being held, what depth lies beneath the stillness. That mystery, when combined with evident self-control, draws people in. It suggests depth, it suggests strength, and it suggests someone worth knowing. 4. Oh, you said, attraction is rooted in composure, expended this keynote of 500 words without any subheadings and conclusion, ChatGPT said. Attraction is often misunderstood as a superficial or fleeting quality tied to appearance, charm, or eloquence. While those elements may capture attention momentarily, they rarely sustain lasting interest. What truly holds people, what quietly commands respect and deep admiration, is composure. Composure is the steady, grounded presence that signals a person is in control of themselves. It is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to regulate emotion. It is not silence for the sake of avoiding conflict, but the power to choose one's response with care and intention. When someone demonstrates composure, they send a message that they are not easily shaken, and in an unpredictable world, that kind of steadiness is magnetic. People are drawn to composure because it suggests reliability. It creates a sense of psychological safety. We are instinctively wary of those who are quick to anger, easily flustered, or emotionally erratic. These behaviors introduce chaos and unpredictability, which can be exhausting to navigate. In contrast, the composed individual offers consistency. You know what to expect. They don't panic in the face of challenge, they don't overreact to stress, and they don't let ego dominate the conversation. This calm energy creates trust, and trust, once established, deepens attraction beyond the surface. Composure also reflects confidence, the quiet kind that doesn't need to be stated or performed. A composed person doesn't seek constant reassurance or dominate a room to prove their worth. Their self-assurance is visible in how they carry themselves, how they listen, how they speak only when there is something meaningful to say. This restraint creates an aura of presence. Others begin to take note, not because this person is trying to impress, but because they aren't. Their lack of urgency to prove themselves becomes a kind of proof in itself. It suggests maturity and depth, the kind of qualities people are drawn to when they're tired of surface-level engagement. In moments of conflict or tension, composure is especially powerful. The ability to remain calm when others are losing their temper, to think clearly when others are reacting emotionally, is a form of leadership. It shows that the person is not ruled by fear, anger, or insecurity. That emotional balance is not only attractive, it's rare, and anything rare tends to be valued. Composure also signals a person's capacity for patience and long-term thinking. They don't need instant gratification. They're not driven by impulses. That restraint communicates that they have discipline, and discipline is a deeply attractive trait because it points to reliability, consistency, and strength of character. There is a kind of magnetism that comes with self-possession. When someone is composed, their presence has weight. They don't need to draw attention. They attract it by being fully in control of themselves. Their peace becomes noticeable in a room full of noise. Their calm becomes a kind of authority, and that authority, grounded not in dominance but in self-discipline, draws people in, not with force but with gravity.